You're back in London, is all Sean was saying?
Yeah, I am in London. I've been here for like a week, and I was on vacation most of January. Did a bit of work, but mostly vacation. And I'm such a workaholic that I was so excited to get back to work that I booked in everything for February. And now February's here. I am so busy. It's just wild. And I love it, but it's so chaotic.
Well, that was my next question is how are you with vacation in general? Because I see your tour dates. I see all the stuff you post. Like I can identify how crazy that must be at the point you're at right now. Are you able to take breaks, or does taking a break feel kind of guilty?
I'm better than I used to be when I was like 5 years younger. But the first 6 days of vacation, I can switch off. And then after that, I know we were sat in like around in our hotel, and my fiance, she was in the pool and I was next to the pool on my laptop, literally making beats. I was like, I have the itch today. I have to do it. I'm sorry.
Does she get it at least? She kind of knows that's how you are.
Yeah, she knows me, she knows what she signed up for.
Yeah. That's good though. I mean, I think that's as long as everybody has the understanding, then there's no problem. Like it's the way I always look at that kind of thing is, everybody's built a little different. And as long as the system you have works for you, it's only got to work for you. It doesn't have to work for anybody else. Like whatever that system is, as long as you don't feel like you're missing out on something, or as long as you don't feel like, the way you're doing this is sort of harming you in some way in the long term. For me, I'm like, well, whatever, man, go do it. Have fun.
Yeah, I think as long as you're following your own path and not being distracted by what everyone else is doing, and it's easier said than done. Sometimes you can see, oh, this person's just done this. I want to do that. I have to do that right now. And I can get distracted by that sometimes. But yeah, as long as you got to remember that it's your own path that you're on, and your own path might include a vacation.
Yeah. In fact, I would argue it probably should include a vacation here and there.
It probably should.
Well, it's interesting, man, talking about this kind of stuff off the bat, because right before you came on, I was, watching some of your YouTube and just refreshing myself on some of your older music, all that. And so much of your life you put out there. So much of your life is on camera. Not only the shows and the travel, but I mean, you're like fully vlogging. You're talking directly to the camera. You're dispensing life lessons. You're letting people see, the shit that's happening in your life. Is there like I guess it's two-part question. Like, A, how did that start for you? Like, how did you embrace that? And B, like, is there a line between like public and private that you've had to carve out for yourself?
Okay. So before I was really taking DJing too seriously, I was already doing YouTube. And I sometimes say to people, if I'd have done YouTube back when I first did YouTube, if I really went for it, I could have been like Logan Paul or something like.
Yeah. You could have actually been bigger than you are
exactly,
now.
Exactly, because I deleted the video because it was so cringe. But one of my first YouTube videos would have literally been like 15 years ago.
Wow.
And like the people who started at that time, they're like the YouTube gods that we know today. So
what kind of stuff were you doing back then? What were you putting online?
It was like prank type stuff, and it was kind of like, I'm a DJ, but here are some sort of stupid things that I'm getting up to, and I wasn't consistent with it. And I think there's a big lesson in that. And so many people start things, and I think this is really dumbed down, but the only difference between Logan Paul and me is he just kept fucking going and going and going, whereas I was like, nah, don't want to do that today.
Dude, I mean, I absolutely hear what you're saying, but I almost take an opposite lesson from it too, because to me, the only difference between, well, first of all, there's multiple differences, but like the main difference between Logan Paul and you at this point to me is like, you are now known for like an artistic talent, whereas he is just kind of known for being an asshole. Like,
like, all right, bad example. But yeah, I mean, it's probably a blessing as well, because I don't think I think the music is the most. It speaks to me more powerfully than anything else. Like, I was getting in trouble in school at 13 years old for bringing a boombox in and playing it through lessons and stuff, and repeatedly being told no, but I just had to share the music that I'd heard with all the people around me. So the music's always been there more powerfully for me than the idea of being a YouTuber.
Right.
But yeah, I was making videos even back when I wasn't really a very serious DJ. And then where that went, I kind of stopped doing all of that and took DJing really seriously, learned how to produce music. And then during the pandemic, I started doing live streams just because I wanted the same connection with people through music that I was used to having. And I was used to DJing every weekend. I was used to meeting people, going around the world and seeing how the music touched people. And that was taken away from us all. And I wanted it back. I really missed having the connection with the people and feeling like I could impact people's lives. And I know during the pandemic, everyone started a live stream, but I can honestly say I was one of the first. Yeah. And I was already posting DJ sets on my YouTube, so I already had an audience on there. And we grew the live stream really, really quickly and really, really big, and consistently did it twice a week for 2 years. And the connection that I found with people, even beyond music, like, these people were my friends. I was their friend. I was in their living room twice a week, and we were interacting in the live chat. And that connection, I realized, was something that I'd never seen before, and something really special that I wanted to invest in as much as I possibly could. Now, the problem happened when the pandemic ended and I had loads of new fans. So I was getting booked to DJ everywhere, which was amazing because I had zero money. I had no money. I was like, yes, they want to pay me. Yes, I can get on a plane and DJ. But I couldn't do the live stream anymore. So I was racking my brains, and I was actually really scared. I was like, we've built this amazing thing, and now I have this opportunity, but I have to let the thing go in order to take the opportunity. And it was really tough for me mentally. And through that sort of trying to figure out what to do, I came up with the idea of doing a weekly vlog. And we are on episode 126. And we've done it every single week. I mean, maybe skipped one or two, but almost every single week since we started. And that's sort of my journey with YouTube. And I think that we still have that connection with people where we're a part of their lives, and we can hopefully improve their day sometimes and share our stories and share what we've learned, and hopefully have an impact on the world through that. So that's my journey with YouTube.
Dude, I love it, man. I mean, you're sort of made for it. I was thinking about this earlier too, before you hopped on, that like, I think you have this very rare combination of ingredients as an artist, as a person, maybe, where like you sort of are combining, like, the camera loves you and you're very engaging and entertaining in that kind of YouTuber streamer way, but then you're also very good at DJing, like on a technical level, in terms of like the actual, the DJ tricks you're doing, like all the shit with the CDJs and, things that a lot of DJs who are playing the shows you play aren't doing. And I think that is a rare combination. I feel like it usually goes one way or the other. Either it's like the technical wizard who is sort of underappreciated by the mainstream because it's like, well, I don't really get this. I can't connect to this. It seems cool, but I don't really know what they're doing from like a crowd perspective. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of it, which is like, oh, this is the most entertaining person in the world. Yeah, the music's kind of, mid, but that's fine because they're entertaining. And I don't know, you've sort of managed to like weave in between those two I think in a way I haven't really seen much before. I don't know how intentional that is or whether that's just sort of how you're built, but I think it's worth noting.
Thank you. Firstly, I like to think that's intentional. I think I'm a geek. I'm a tech guy. Like, I love, if you could see the amount of gear behind me right now. And I like to do crazy stuff with DJ equipment. And I'm not by any means the best in the world at doing crazy stuff with DJ equipment. Like, there's turntablist DJs out there who I can't even keep up with what they're doing. And, you know, but what I do think I am one of the best at is doing it in a way that the people watching and the people listening will find entertaining. Because I think there is a world of DJing out there when it gets really technical, where it's so niche that the average person would be like, I don't understand what's happening. So yeah. I try and show people something really cool and exciting, but in a way that they're going to understand and that they're actually going to hopefully appreciate.
Yeah, man. I mean, you do it very well. And I think, again, it's like we're sort of getting into the weeds here on like DJ theory, but I think it's worth talking about because, I don't know, watching you, I mean, of course, I think about a guy like DJ EZ, who's, you know, legend in terms of like technical wizardry on CDJs. For, you know, this podcast has a mostly American audience. So for my American people, if you don't know DJ EZ, absolutely go look up his videos.
We actually call him EZ in the UK.
I was about to ask, dude. Yeah. Yeah. Would he be mad at me calling him EZ? Maybe I should say
honestly,
EZ.
I don't know. I'm sure you wouldn't be the first American to call him EZ.
Probably not. Well, either way, it's spelled E, the letter Z, or Z, as you would say. But anyway, he's fucking amazing. And I see echoes of what he does in what you do. But then, there is also this more presentational aspect, this like, I think you have an innate understanding of like, I hate to use this word, but like content and like how to make something palatable and comprehensible for sort of the average non-nerd, you know?
I try.
It's such an interesting cocktail. I mean, for you, all of these skills, like we're kind of talking theoretically, but like, when did you start learning the technical side of DJing, the trick side? Because that's not easy. It takes a long time to get good at that.
Well, to be honest with you, I DJed for a long time before anyone had ever heard my name. I used to be a resident DJ in Liverpool and various cities around the UK. And I used to work 6 hours a night, 6 nights a week sometimes. And I think I just spent so many hours DJing that I was kind of looking for ways to make it a bit more exciting for myself. And I saw other DJs, I picked up things and I was like, oh, that guy just did that thing with a loop. I wonder if we do that. How can we use that to transition into another track? And just through my own repetition almost, because when you're a resident DJ, you do find yourself playing the same songs. You do find yourself playing them in similar order, and anyone who does the same thing over and over gets to a point where it gets really easy for them, and that's when you find yourself in a position where you can add sort of flair to things because you don't have to think about doing it anymore. It's a second nature to you. So yeah, I spent many hours DJing, and then found myself in a position where I was able to sort of add a bit of flair. And then in 2016, that's when I switched over to CDJs. I was using Serato before that. So I used to play all genres and
same here. I know that girl. Yeah.
All the best DJs did. And yeah, so I used to play all genres, play in Serato. And in 2016, I bought some CDJs and went all in on the CDJs. And I remember I was trying to save my money so I could get a third CDJ, because I wanted to be able to play acapellas on top. And then in 2017, I was in touch with Dan Tate from Pioneer DJ, and he invited me to do the DJ Sounds show. And that's the first time that I'd ever played with 4 decks. And I remember I borrowed someone's deck because I only had 3. I borrowed someone so that I could practice on 4, and I made this whole hour-long routine on 4 decks, and that was the first time I'd ever used 4. And that video is on YouTube, actually. James Hype DJ Sounds Show 2017. It makes me cringe now, but yeah, if you want to see what 8 years does, then go and look at that.
Oh man, that's fun. That's so fun though, man. And in that time, like, you know, you're a resident DJ, you're picking up tricks, you're linking up with Pioneer. People are starting to notice that you're getting pretty good. Where was your head at the time? Like, were you already like, this is my life, I am on a path, I'm headed somewhere? Or was there a moment somewhere in there where you felt like, oh, this is serious now?
I think I always believed that if I really chased it down, I could have it. I remember when I was about 21 years old, I was a resident DJ, and I was just in Liverpool in the sort of local clubs, and I was happy with how everything was going. And there was a competition being run by BBC Radio 1, which was like one of the biggest radio stations in the UK. And back in the time when everyone used to listen to the radio, so it was really big. And it was called Superstar DJ Competition, and they wanted to find a DJ to play for them in Ibiza, and they would feature you on the radio, and it was crazy. It was epic for somebody like me. And my mum had like dared me to enter this competition, and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to go for it. And I entered the competition, and I ended up in the final. I was in the final 10, and they invited me to BBC Radio 1 in London. And living in Liverpool, going to London is really cool because it's like the biggest city. And it opened my eyes. But not only was going to London cool, while I was in the competition at BBC Radio 1, I met Calvin Harris, I met Nero, and all of these radio presenters who I'd listened to on the radio for years. And what that did for me, that opened my eyes and showed me what was out there, because I was in Liverpool messing around, and I hadn't really thought, oh, maybe I could be Calvin Harris. I'd never thought that, and I'd never thought maybe I'll go to London and do all these cool things. But when I was given that opportunity, I saw it and I touched it, and I realized that that's what I wanted forever. And from that day forward, I was chasing no matter what it took to get back to that place. I didn't win the competition.
Right.
I came second or third, but honestly, I think that was probably the best thing that could have happened, because it gave me just enough to know that I wanted to be there. But it also gave me the no and told me, you're not good enough yet, work harder.
Right.
So a few years after that, I saved up the money that I had and moved to London. And I remember when I first got to London, I had like $50 to my name, and I was just doing whatever I could to be noticed by promoters, by the people who own the nightclubs. And I was making music, I was posting it online every single week. I was working so hard to get to that point where I could afford to be in London and actually make money from this music thing, because I knew that's where I had to go with it.
I love that, man. I mean, there's a lot in what you just said. One thing that sticks out to me is the importance of actually going and seeing it with your own eyes, I think is so huge. Because one thing I talk about a lot on this podcast now is like, with the, social media and the internet being what it is now, it's like you can kind of do it from anywhere, right? Like if you make cool music, you can get noticed kind of anywhere you are and start it that way. But I think it's a really good point that like, even with that, sometimes still just like, go out there to the thing you're interested in, actually physically look at it with your eyes, see what it looks like. It's like you understand it, and it gives you this perspective in a way that I don't think the internet can. You know what I mean?
It's like I was sat in a room with Calvin Harris, and I'm like, oh, he's just like me. He's a normal guy. Right. And then something switches in your head. You're like, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I could do that.
I'm a normal guy. Yeah. It's like, no, dude, 100%. And I mean, I love talking about the path to get to where you are now too, because, you've mentioned a couple times now, like just trying to put together enough money to just be able to keep going, you know? And like, how, if you're comfortable with me asking you this question, like how long was that your life as far as like, not necessarily being broke, but just like, I don't know. I mean, I got enough money for another month. Let's see if I can put another month in front of that.
Yeah. Well, when I first moved to London, that's when I really was the starving artist. You know, that's when I was like scraping around trying to find enough money to pay the bills, and doing whatever I could to make a few hundred. I probably had 2 years where that was my reality every day, and I would take the bus to the studio, but that wasn't painful for me at the time, because I was so sure that what I was doing was the right thing, that I knew that could have taken me 5 years of living like that, or it could have been the following day when someone called me up and said, we want to give you 50,000 for something you've done, you know. And that's where my mind was at. I was so sure that the trajectory was up, that I wasn't worried about the future. I maybe some months I had negative balance in my bank account, some months I maybe had $500, but I knew that where I was going was the right way.
You don't strike me as an uncertain person, like in terms of your personality. It seems like you're very good at sort of focusing on the goal and kind of just following the path without getting too distracted. I don't know if you agree. That's just the impression I get from talking to you for 20 minutes. But if I'm right about that, where do you think that comes from? Because not everybody has that.
It's a really good question.
All of this shit comes from childhood, I think, but it's like, is it, some family member that you watched do something? Are there entrepreneurs in your family history or your friends or something?
I think there's a few moments in my life where people really believed in me. And up until that point, the only person who believed in me was me. But when someone else externally believes in you, they don't even realize at the time the impact that's having. But I remember as a resident DJ, I was scraping around playing the Tuesday night, earning $150, and I did that for a couple of years, playing the low-level clubs, low-level nights. And then there was this one guy, there was a club manager called Pete, and he was the first guy who had really, he'd taken me to one side, and he was like, oh, we're launching this new club, and I want you to head up the music for it, because I think that you can put the policy together in a way that reflects what we want, and I think you can deliver that with your mashup style. And he'd seen something in me that he hadn't seen in other people, and he thought that was what his business needed. And I'd never been acknowledged in that way before. I just DJ'd because I loved it. I thought I was all right.
Yeah.
I thought I was good enough. I was good enough for $150. But Pete thought that I was really good. And there have been Petes at various stages through my life who've picked me up just that little bit further than the baseline level. And I think without those people, I might not be sat here today. So something that I try and do when I see somebody who's really grinding or really going for it, I try and let them know, I'm like, you're doing the right thing, keep going. Dude. Because I never know, some people might not care, but for some people that might keep them going for another 2 years, and then they make that hit and then they've made it.
Dude, we all need a Pete. Everybody needs a Pete. 100%. It means so much, especially when you're just starting off, and that can feel so lonely and you don't know if you're doing the right thing or not. You're so right. I've had those moments too. I think for me, it's more in production. Like when I first started producing, I had a lot of imposter syndrome, a lot of like, I'm not as, this is okay, but I'm not as good as XYZ, blah, 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 in my own head. And then it's exactly that. It was like, I can remember specifically like 2 or 3 compliments a couple people I really respected gave me, and that was it. It solved the whole thing. Because once they said that, I was like, oh, well, if they think that, and I think they're like one of the best, then what am I doing here? You know, and I try to tell everybody, man, it's like, it's such a simple way to contribute to not only the health of like your friends and people trying to make it, but I think the scene in general is just like, throw somebody a compliment once in a while.
Why not, man? Why not? What are you going to lose?
Right. Yeah, 100%. Because like you said, man, you never know who needs to hear it, but that we all kind of do, you know? Am I right, by the way? This is a total tangent, but I was reading up about you. Were you a happy hardcore guy early on?
I had a phase. I've never been involved in the scene. I used to listen to it when I was a teenager.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe I might have just read like a little interview quote or something. The only reason I ask is because I went through a phase myself when I was a teenager. Really? Oh, huge. Yeah. But you know, I was in the States, so it was kind of me like the stateside happy hardcore scene in the late 90s, early 2000s was like tiny. You know, it was 20 people around the entire country, more or less. But yeah, so it was me looking at the UK and wishing I could go party over there.
I used to buy Bonkers CDs.
Oh yeah, shout out to Bonkers, man. That was anyway. We don't have to talk about happy hardcore too much. I just anytime I meat someone who had that phase, I love talking about it because it's like just the most ridiculous music of all time. What was your entry point, I guess is what I really should ask, in terms of like, do you remember being a kid and either going out to a club, hearing something, or your friend played you something, or you heard it on the radio, and all of a sudden it's like the light bulb turns on?
Yeah, there were like three sources of dance music for me when I was growing up. My dad used to get these bootleg CDs from his friends at work, and they would have like the top 100 albums all on one DVD. And I would just go through and like look for cool stuff, and most of it was just boring to me. And then I remember I found the Prodigy "Fat of the Land"
big one
on one of those, and I was obsessed with that. And then I found a drum and bass compilation on there as well, and that was like, whoa, what's this? And then on top of that, I used to skate, and a lot of the music that I found that I was like, that I would not know where to find anywhere else was on skate videos and DVDs. And I remember got the Fugees' "Ready or Not" DJ Zinc remix. Huge, was on a skate video, and I just watched it so many times just for the song, because there was no Shazam, there was no nothing like that, so I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it was so sick.
Yeah.
And then also we used to drive to France on vacation. Because when you're in the UK, you just drive down to the south, take a boat. It's like 1 hour on the boat, and then you're in France. So we used to drive to France on vacation in the summer. And when you get to France, the radio stations, they were playing like Eurodance stuff that we didn't hear in the UK on your sort of top 40 radio. And I remember one of the tracks that was on repeat one summer when we were on vacation in France was High Tax, Say, Say, Say.
Oh, yeah, I know that record, yeah.
With the Michael Jackson sample, and I loved that. So there were always those sort of summer records that we'd hear when we went over to Europe as well.
Dude, well, it's interesting because hearing you talk about that, you tell me if this is too far of a reach, but I mean, DJ Zinc, Ready or Not remix, and like the Michael Jackson sample, I feel like I can draw a line from you being turned on to that as a kid, like kind of directly to a lot of the productions you're making now, as like, you know, in terms of like the perspective of it, the sort of like direct sampling, but I don't know. I guess I'd be curious how you think about some of your big records that have those really distinct samples in them. Because I think when you use a big sample, like you have in a few different big tunes of yours, like it's such a tricky tightrope to walk in terms of like, you're using a big sample. So obviously you want people to recognize it, engage with it in sort of like a, you know, like a not necessarily nostalgia, but there's a moment of identification. But I think it's so easy to go too far with it, and just your record is like just cornball, cheese, whatever. And I think you managed to like walk a really good line of like, it's not, the sample isn't buried. It's very upfront, but I think it's also not just like I don't know, man. There's so many shitty sample house records, especially in 2025. Like, do you think about that? Do you have a way you approach records like that when you're in the studio?
Well, I feel like it's got to be greater than the sum of its parts. Like, it would be quite easy to throw a 90s sample on everything and instantly it's recognizable, but that doesn't mean it's good. And I mean, I'm probably partly to blame for the popularity of samples these days, because obviously my biggest record samples an R&B instrumental.
That's a good thing, though. I think that is not anything to be like, oh, sorry, my bad, because that just means if you actually were, one of the first people or one of the most prominent to do it, and a bunch of people tried to copy it, that just means you had a cool idea.
I definitely wasn't one of the first.
I shouldn't have said first, but you know what I mean, right? Like in any kind of wave, in any kind of scene, there's like a few people who like spark an explosion of it, and then there's a lot of derivative stuff that comes after.
Yeah. I like to create on my own late at night, and I don't sing very well. I don't rap. I don't even play keys. So a lot of the time, I'm just like throwing like any old audio file into Ableton, and sometimes that's like someone else's record, sometimes it comes out good.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's how the sort of Ferrari concept came about. It was just I saved loads of playlists on Spotify of like things that would be cool to sample, and then one night I was like, oh, let me just try this. Threw the beat into Ableton and just put like a super simple house beat on it, played it to some friends the next day, and they were like, yo, this is crazy. And yeah, we wrote the song straight from there. So I don't set out to sample things. It's a big part of the way that I create. I was the DJ before I was a producer, so the reason I wanted to be able to produce was partly just to mash things up together.
I'm the same as you. I was a DJ before I was a producer, and it's the exact same thing. Like, I really connected with what you said earlier about you being in school and bringing the boombox just because you had to share it. It's like, and that was me to a T. And I think it goes into your production too, as far as like, it doesn't have to be sort of a grand architected plan of how a song comes together. It's just like, oh no, I really like this song. And I was fucking around and this is pretty fun. And, that's sort of, if you can really get yourself to that point in the studio where you're legitimately just fucking around and it's just about the fun and the creativity, like it's sort of, maybe it's obvious to say, but that is how the best records get made, is when you're not thinking so much about it, Mm-hmm. I don't know. I mean, have you learned over time? Like, because now your time is strictly marshaled. I'm sure you have a million things to do. Have you learned anything about like how to get yourself in that zone, connect with creativity? Okay.
No.
Great. Just checking.
I probably start, I'm going to say 400 tracks a year.
Yeah.
And you probably hear 6.
Honestly, that's not bad. That's not the worst.
But yeah, I don't have a strategy for making that into the hit. Right. That's maybe some people do, but
well, some people have figured out like efficiency hacks, and I'm always amazed at that, because I've never been the kind of guy who can just sit down and lay out a full song in like 5 to 10 minutes, just efficiently turning it into like a polished product is what takes me a long time. I don't know if you're the same, but it's a lot of unfinished ideas for sure.
Yeah. I think I can do remixes quite formulaically. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know, but that's something I find easy. And my manager sometimes says, he's like, yeah, but why can't you just treat it as though you're remixing it? You know, like an original record, because he knows I'll find a remix easy. And I'm like, it just doesn't work like that in my head.
Yes. I've talked to some people about the idea, like trying to think about it like you're just sampling. And it's like, the trick is you're sampling yourself, but it's like going back to an idea, taking out a little part of it, throwing it into a brand new session, and just treating it like you would treat any other sample. Which is not a bad way to look at it. But you're right, it's not always that easy to do in practice. All of those big songs, like when you made Ferrari, you throw that in, you get that reaction from your friends. Do you have a sense of what is or isn't going to work? Like, did you know it was going to be big?
I knew that it was better than anything I'd made in the past month or so. You know, I knew it was one of the better things that I made. And it wasn't until it existed for a very, very long time. Like, we made the original demo in 2019, and it sounded quite different to the version that you guys know. The drums were a lot clunkier. It was a bit more like staccato in the drums and the bass. And the initial idea was we wrote the chorus really easily. It came in about 10 minutes. Me and a few mates who I was working with loads at the time, and then I'd played it to my manager, and he'd played it to some A&Rs and stuff, and they were all convinced that it wasn't finished. They were all convinced that the idea that they had was we would have the chorus, and then it would drop with the guitar, and there would be a rapper on it, and that was sort of what we were all aiming towards, and we were trying to get the right rapper. And the right rapper wasn't interested. So we recorded about 4 different UK rappers. And then we actually got a verse from Sway Lee as well, which was just not right.
Yeah.
It was cool, but it wasn't the rap that was going to like carry the drop that everyone thought. It was way more chill.
Right.
So yeah, it just wasn't right. So the record was just on the shelf, like properly on the shelf for a long, long time. And I knew it was amazing, and my manager knew it was amazing, but we just thought it wasn't finished. So I made a remix of it to play in my DJ sets, which was a little bit dragged out, a little bit heavier, and it didn't have a rapper. It didn't have a gap for a rapper. It just had the song, a build up, and then the drop with the guitar. And I started playing this remix at my shows. And I remember the first time I dropped it at a festival in the UK, I saw the crowd react. I was like, wow, that's pretty good for something they've never heard before. I mean, they may be familiar with the sample, but they've never heard this record. And I kept on dropping it in my sets, and it became something that people would ask me for on my Instagram and stuff. They'd be like, "Oh, when is the Ferrari song dropping?" Oh, here's another thing. It wasn't even called Ferrari. It was called "Do You Still Want Me?" But the people named it Ferrari. The people in the comments, the people in the they were like, "What's the Ferrari song? What's the Ferrari song?" And then I continued playing the song in my DJ sets everywhere I went, and it was the biggest feature of my whole live stream through the 2020s. And then one day, a radio DJ who I'm really good friends with, he called me and he said, "James, I've just been sent a promo from a major label that sounds just like your record, Ferrari." And at this point, there were loads of people uploading clips of me playing Ferrari to YouTube. There was one that had like 70,000 views. This is a record that's not been released, and people are ripping it from sets and uploading it. It's getting somewhat popular. And what's happened is someone in a major label has suggested that someone else should copy it. So another producer has copied the record, not exactly the same, but they've used the same sample and they've written a song around it, and it's it's pretty clear that it's a cheap Ferrari.
Interesting.
So yeah, so we had the release date when it was supposed to come out, because this radio DJ friend, he was sent it way ahead of time. So we knew when it was going to come out, and me and my manager were on the phone. We're furious, but we're like, what are we going to do? So we decided we're going to release Ferrari tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the version that came out was my remix, because the original version was still not finished.
Well, dude, there you go. You remixed yourself. It's what we were just talking about.
I did, right. And it fucking worked.
Man, that is a wild story. That's so crazy.
Wild. But I'm actually grateful for it, because without that thing happening, I don't think the version of Ferrari that the world loves would even be out there.
Right. Yes. Yeah. That's another good point, man, is sometimes it's so possible to edit a song to death. Like just tinker and not release it, and eventually it's like unrecognizable. That happens so much, and it's so easy to do. That's so crazy though, man. Like I love thinking about those little random moments. Like just if you hadn't gotten the heads up that, you know, they were going to release that song, then that song comes out, yours probably doesn't. You know, it's like, it's such a random little thing. But sometimes the music industry is so ridiculous that way. Man, was the touring intense before the pandemic, or was it post-pandemic that it really went crazy?
The touring existed, but it wasn't. I'd never been to the USA. I'd occasionally do shows in Europe, but I think I was more than 50% of my shows were in the UK before the pandemic, and it was local clubs. Not local to me, but traveling around doing various local clubs, you know.
You were putting in work, Yeah.
And then we'd occasionally go to Europe and do the odd club or the odd festival there. But touring existed, but it wasn't like how we tour these days.
What was the first time coming to the US like? What was that story?
Well, I always dreamed of coming to the US. Like it's always just been this like El Dorado to me.
Had you ever been, like, as a kid?
Yes, I went on vacation when I was 15. We went to LA, and I was so in love with the place and the culture and the people. And I remember we went to San Francisco as well, and I bought this CD because I knew that San Francisco was famous for like house music. And it's funny because I didn't even remember really being into house music when I was 15, but I obviously was. I bought this CD and it was called like the San Francisco Mix. And I remember I played it to death when I got home, and I actually rebought the CD a few years ago because I wanted to hear. I couldn't find it online.
I've been doing that too. Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. So I found the CD, rebought it because I wanted to hear those songs that I was listening to again. And it was like the Cube Guys and Dennis the Menace, that kind of stuff.
Yo, yeah, of course, man. Oh, that's so fun. Yeah, I rebought an LTJ Bookham mix that I had from when I was a kid that I couldn't find anywhere. I don't think it's online. It's like just CD. So yeah, I was an eBay hunt for a while, but
yeah. And were you overwhelmed or underwhelmed?
No, very overwhelmed. Yeah, it was like, because when you're a kid, you can listen to something 100 times in a row and not get sick of it, and it's just like, oh, those 2 months of my life, that was the only thing I listened to. Yeah. Like I lost that ability as an adult. I can't really do that anymore. But yeah, like it just. I don't know if it was the same for you rebuying the San Francisco CD, but like the second the first song started, it was like, oh, I'm 15 again. Immediately.
Totally.
Yeah, puts you in that place.
After visiting the US, I was so in love with it. And I mean, growing up in the UK, we import so much culture from the US as well. So we're always surrounded by everything American. So I always wanted to go there. I knew that. And when I was reaching people all over the world through the pandemic, I knew I was reaching loads of people in the USA, and that was so exciting to me. I tried to get the visa, and the process took forever, and it cost loads of money.
It's crazy.
And I didn't have any money. And the first time that I tried to get the visa, something went wrong, and it wasn't approved. And I actually had to cancel my first US tour, which was painful because I was sat in the UK with very little money in my bank account and all of these big, exciting plans. And all of a sudden I was staying at home for another month. So the first tour, I had to go on my own, had to go solo because the government wouldn't let anyone else into the country apart from the O1 visa holder because of the pandemic.
Right.
So I had no like camera guy or anything like that. And I vlogged it all by myself. And those vlogs are actually on YouTube still. It's a different channel because I knew they were a bit crap. So I didn't put them on my main channel. It's called James Hype Life. And yeah, I went around and it was humbling and overwhelming. And I remember the first show I did, it was in I'm not really sure what the venue was.
What city?
El Paso, Texas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And yeah, I'd never heard of the venue. I remember I looked for it on Instagram and it didn't exist, which is always a good sign, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I rocked up and the support DJ was playing and there was no one on the dance floor, literally 0 people. So I was in the sort of, not really a green room, but like the side room. And I was just like, whoa, this is not good at all. Just get on with it. Play the music, get out of here. And I walked up onto the stage and suddenly there were 70 people in front of me out of nowhere. They'd obviously been waiting for me to come on. They were just stood around the walls and they all came to the front. And 70 people is not a lot of people. Not even in this small club, it's not a lot of people. But the people making up these 70 people were so excited to see me. They had custom banners. They had custom T-shirts. One guy had a huge fire emoji because on the live stream we were saying fire emojis in the chat. And it absolutely blew my mind. And I actually posted a clip from that show on my Instagram a few months ago because I think it's important that people can see a show that I played where 70 people showed up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that show will always stay with me because it went from, oh, there's no one here to, oh, there's 70 people here, but they are your serious fans. And I hadn't seen that sort of passion in crowds before. And the tour continued, and there were more than 70 people at all the other shows.
Yeah, of course.
Which was good. And yeah, then over the course of the next how many years? Like 4 years. Well, less than 4 years. Obviously, I've built a much larger fan base in the USA, and it's probably the best place to play in the world. I'm not going to lie. The people are amazing. The clubs are amazing. The festivals are amazing, and I almost think though there used to be this sort of culture amongst house music people that the USA wasn't very cool, but it fucking is.
Well, yeah, I mean, the USA, you guys are all in the UK. You're always a couple of years ahead of us in terms of what's cool. At least that's what I think. And so I think for the US, like it took a couple years. We were a couple of years behind to catch on to the current wave of house music. But yeah, at this point, man, I'm with you. I mean, yeah, I love that story about El Paso though, man, because that's those people. Earlier, you were talking about, you know, the different kind of connection you felt when you were streaming and talking to people in the chat, and you were kind of part of each other's lives in an interesting way. And it also makes me think about there's this old Ice-T quote, and I'll butcher it. I don't remember the exact words, but it's basically he's talking about like what you need for success as an artist. And he's like, you know, yeah, people get it twisted with like, you know, I got to be the most famous. I got to be this on every stage. He's like, no, what you need is 1,000 people who will buy a t-shirt from you twice a year. It's I might be getting the numbers wrong a little bit, but it's something like that where he's like, just think about that. All you need to do is get 1,000 people to really like your music, really fuck with you, really buy into it. That will sustain you if you serve those people, you know? And it's kind of a different way to think about it, where it's like that core audience means something different than the wider audience. Both are good. You want both in an ideal world, but like the core can't really be replaced no matter how big the wide audience is, you know? But anyway, just made me think about that. It also made me think about what is success to you at this point? Like, because when you got into it earlier, we were talking about, you know, you didn't exactly know where it was headed and you didn't exactly have an idea of how big it could get. I'm sure that's changed over time. Do you have an idea of what success is at this point for you, or like what is important to get out of it for you at this point?
I do have an idea of what success is, but I think that's something that has taken me time to figure out. And I think anyone in this world is in danger of following someone else's idea of success. And what I mean by that is there's always somebody whose job it is to tell you to strive to do more shows, or strive to be higher up the lineup, or keep pushing for the number one record. And those things are great, but those things aren't the things that are going to make you happy. And those things aren't the things that you're going to be happy you did when you're 90 years old. They're more of a materialistic thing, and they're more of an ego thing. And I think what really makes the difference for the world and for the long term is the people that you can help along the way and the people whose lives you can touch. And then really giving back to the people who are there for you as well. Like recently, me and my fiance, we took our families on vacation to Las Vegas because they'd never been to Las Vegas before. And we just kind of hung out in Vegas and showed them all the cool stuff. And the ability to do that, that's like the most I've felt success, is when I can like bring my family to see cool things and stuff. And yeah, and I hope I can do that for even more people in the future, you know, like share experiences with people and impact people's lives.
I mean, 100%, man. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's also important to say, like, you can do that at any level of the game, any place you're in at the time. You know, it's like, I think back, I'm sure you do too, of like earlier in my career when maybe I was more goal focused, career focused in terms of like climbing the rungs. And now I look back, I was like, oh yeah, none of that mattered at all. Like the things I remember fondly and took value from were the shared experiences I had with my friends and my peers, and the pieces of the world and culture I got to see, and yeah, what I could share with others and help other people. It's literally the only thing I can even remember about those times. You know, like I don't remember any of the like ladder climbing shit that I probably thought a lot about.
But it's so set up to suck you into that.
Yes.
Because it is a business, and it is the music business.
Yes.
And the business element will always want you to have a higher fee and sell more tickets and have more streams, you know? And yeah, so it is set up to suck you into that.
100%. And, you know, to be fair, it's like, I'm not looking at it with rose-colored glasses. You do have to figure out some way to make it sustainable financially.
Oh, of course.
You know, all of that. And so it's like, yeah, you have to be aware of that. But I think at least maybe this is too romantic of a view, but for me, like thinking about you talking about all of those years where you were just grinding it out and focused on the goal, but you know, it could have come in a month, or maybe it was going to come in 5 years. You didn't know. But for me, it's like, as long as you're focused on the passion of it and the authenticity of what you're doing, that you're doing it because you really care about whatever the thing is, I hope, fingers crossed, I really hope that reality is that you do that long enough and stay true long enough, like the money and the other shit, it comes. You just don't know exactly when.
We really hope that.
Yeah.
We really hope that, because yeah, that's if that is the case, then the world is a great place.
Right. Yeah. And to be fair, you know, it's probably not true for every single person, but I think I think the closer you can stay to those ideals, the better chance you'll have of getting lucky. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like of attracting that kind of thing.
Honestly, just to interject, like I wasn't unhappy when I had $50 in the bank account and I was taking the bus to the studio. I wasn't thinking, oh, I can't wait to have this, and this. I was excited every day because of the possibility of what I could create. And I was excited because I'm so grateful that this world exists, you know? It's like, it gets me out of bed every single morning.
Yeah. Yeah, man. No, I got goosebumps a little when you said I'm so grateful for it, because I feel the same way. And it's, a thing I talk about on this podcast a lot is like the only lesson I can really tell people is like, just follow the fun. Like whatever you think is cool, whatever you think is interesting, chase that. And if you're really chasing that thing and it really means something to you, it's kind of the only really good advice for maybe success I can give anybody, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's what I want to see out of somebody I'm a fan of, right? It's just like, oh, wow, they're really doing this interesting, unique thing that they seem so locked into. I'm intrigued. I want to know more. You know, it's never like, oh, wow, they're executing a business plan really well. You know? Yeah. Man, there's a couple ways I could wrap this up. I think I'll do it in the traditional way for this podcast, which is the last question I usually ask is kind of a quick random access memory kind of question. It's kind of just the first thing that pops into your head. Just looking for a moment from your life, a memory from your life. Could be from any time when you were a kid, a week ago, any time when in that moment, in that memory, you really connected with music. Music really meant something to you, had an impact on you. And that could be something as simple as like you heard a song and it gave you goosebumps, or you made you cry, or reminded you of a memory. Maybe it inspired you. Maybe it was on the radio. Maybe it was a concert. Maybe your dad played it for you. Could be anything. No wrong answer. Kind of just the first thing you think of.
Yeah. Well, when I was 18, I used to go out every Thursday night to the clubs in Liverpool, and there was this club called G Bar, and it was like a late night gay club, but all the kids from my college used to go there. And I used to just drive there, and I was sober, and I would just stand up against the speakers because I just loved it. They played like the kind of techno house kind of sound of the time in there. And I was just standing up against the wall, and I remember so vividly the first time I ever heard Axwell, I Found You, the Axwell remode version. And that's like, there's 7 or 8 songs in my life that I remember vividly where I was the first time I heard them, because they touched me so deeply, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, dude. I knew I liked you, man. And that's one of the 7 or 8 for me too. That's like,
sick.
Yeah. I played the shit out of that song for so many years. And it's kind of like I won't say slept on, but it's like, I feel like that's a DJ record, you know?
Well, it wasn't like a hit, was it?
Right. Not like, exactly in the same way.
Pre-Swedish House Mafia, like huge festival hits.
Yeah. It's one of my 7 or 8 too, man. It's untouchable. Could give me goosebumps right now if you put it on. That's a great DJ answer too. It's just like, yeah, that's a tune. That's a big tune. Well, dude, thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me.
Super fun, man. This was great. And man, I hope to see you out on the road somewhere.
Yeah, that'll be dope. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I'll let you get out of here, man. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and good luck getting the streaming system back online.
Thank you, bro.
All right, man. Great talking to you, dude.
Great to meet you, man.
Yeah, you too. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.